Hey guys, what's going on? Laying back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Dollhouse. Dollhouse is a Filipino drama that tells the story of Rustin, a musician who's down on his luck and suffering from drug addiction, which causes him to run out on his family. Several years later, after a friend dies from a similar lifestyle, he decides to try and turn his life around by moving back to Rotterdam in the Netherlands and meeting his daughter Yumi for the first time. The two hit things off quickly as they take part in a variety of activities together, though Rustin is reluctant to reveal his fatherhood to her and her guardian on account of his past reputation. This causes tension to build over time as Rustin must eventually come to face his demons. The past few Filipino movies on Netflix haven't been the best in terms of quality, so I was really happy to see this one turn out so good. Though it's not perfect, its multiple themes and the enchanting relationship of the lead characters make it a touching story about second chances and the strength of the love that exists between father and daughter. Rustin, the main character, took a while for me to get used to at first, because he starts off as a typical druggy rock star whose life is going down the drain. It's a story seen and heard many times before, but once things kicked off, I was impressed to see how many layers there were behind his character. He's a man who feels lost and unfulfilled, choosing drugs over his family, his wife dying shortly after, his music career not going anywhere, and his father being disappointed in him. His continual drug use afterward further contributed to his downward spiral, and all of these struggles feel raw and real in their interpretation. But what makes Rustin truly likable is how willing he is to change himself and make things better while battling his demons at the same time, and often not succeeding in those battles, which makes him even more sympathetic. It was impossible for me to not care for him with how he always tries to do the right thing, even if it's not good enough for others. And if that wasn't enough, his daughter Yumi, in my opinion, was even better. The nature of her childhood innocence puts her in a unique position to appreciate what Rustin does for her where others fail to see it, which is heartwarming to see play out, and her musical aspirations give her a goal to pursue outside of spending time with Uncle Clyde. Aside from this though, I just thought she was flat out adorable. There were so many times I caught myself smiling just from hearing her laugh and seeing her cause mischief. She offsets a lot of the heaviness that comes with a story when it's appropriate, and it's a delight to see her anytime she's on screen. These two characters are great by themselves, but when paired up, that's when the movie truly comes to life. The father-daughter relationship is very much the heart and soul behind the story, and what makes them so charming is how much attention to detail is given for their similarities and differences. One moment they might be playing video games that appeal to one more than the other, and in the next they'll be having a blast making rocket ships out of cardboard. These two do so many things together, and these things reinforce the believability of the relationship, as well as making the movie that much more fun to watch. One of the symbols that represents what the two build together are these doll houses that Rustin builds for Yumi to play with, and I love these symbols because they have multiple meanings behind them. For Rustin and Yumi, they're meant to foster their family bond, while in the eyes of others, they signify a sort of facade, as if the two are playing pretend and aren't a real family. It goes to show how judgmental people can be toward others when the circumstances of a family relationship don't 100% align with someone else's values, even if there is some merit to them. And this type of opposition kept me consistently invested to see Rustin and Yumi accomplish their goals together. Speaking of which, there's this big overarching goal that the two try to pursue in the form of a musical audition where Yumi tries to show off her singing skills, which aren't the best to put it mildly. The setup for it is kind of weird in terms of pacing, but it makes for good comic relief and adds further to the relationship, so I still liked it. The musical pieces in general were well done, with the songs themselves either being catchy or emotional, depending what tone a scene calls for. They also added context to the narrative for Rustin and Yumi in a way that felt more meaningful than it would have been if everything was just spilled out through plain dialogue. Additional context is given through flashback scenes that Rustin experiences once he returns to Rotterdam. I like the clear contrast made between his happy and humble beginnings and how it compares to the sad present that he lives in. It does a great job at visually explaining how far he's fallen from grace and how hard he has to work to redeem himself. At the same time though, the whole Rotterdam setup is a bit jarring, as it happens out of nowhere without any explanation that he had a life in the city. It makes more sense later on, and the beautiful scenery definitely helps with this too, but a little context in the beginning would have made things easier to digest. The main source of tension that drives this movie forward is the eventual reveal of Rustin's past. I was actually surprised with how early the movie burst the bubble in this regard. I thought the movie would have built things up more, but I do like that the movie does shake things up early, as it tests how far Rustin and Yumi are willing to go for each other other at that point, and thus it makes the story more interesting. What I'm not so much a fan of is how selective the movie is when it comes to Rustin's battle with addiction. His challenge with this never seems fully explored, as it pops up only when it's convenient for the plot to generate some conflict and otherwise rarely has any effect on him. A similar thing occurs with how Rustin has to balance his personal life with Yumi and his professional life with music, which is a good idea, but it's not developed enough. He's asked to be a singer for a band after performing just one song at a bar, only for him to drop out and be told that he can return whenever it's convenient. There were just certain things about the story that felt too easy for Rustin, despite the evident struggles that he goes through in life. There's a lot of liberties like this that the movie takes advantage of to move his story along, which I'm not entirely opposed to, but having so many of them makes a story a bit less engaging and more predictable. The movie also tends to be overly sappy and dramatic, but to be honest, I don't have much of an issue with this, as it has more to do with the soundtrack than anything else. The story builds at a relatively stable pace, and there are a lot of important events that occur in it, so even though these events can be exaggerated, the payoff behind them is still fantastic. And I can't deny that even some of the more overblown moments really hit me on an emotional level. The climax in particular is absolutely heartbreaking and easily the most memorable scene in the whole movie. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but if you have, chances are you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. The ending is also effective in conveying the ties that bind Rustin and Yumi together in spite of the obstacles they faced. It tells a positive message of doing what feels right, even if it's not supported by others, and that just trying your best, even if it's not someone else's best, is usually more than enough to communicate love to another person. The movie juggles many themes such as fatherhood and purpose, but to me the most notable one was redemption. At its core, the movie is very much a story about second chances, where the main character encounters hurdles at every corner and jumps and stumbles through all of them just so that he can spend quality time with his daughter. It's hard not to admire someone with such an honest goal, despite his past and present mistakes. Apparently, this movie was inspired by the story of real-life Filipina actress Faye Lorenzo, who was also involved in the making of this movie, and it's thanks to this attention to detail and level of realism that the story came out as beautiful as it ended up being. Overall, Dollhouse is a great drama film that demonstrates the power that a loving bond can have between two people, no matter who or what comes their way. If you like dramas and you're eager to see one with a family-oriented concept behind it, while also being told in a mature manner, you should definitely check this one out. Some of the little shake-ups and conveniences taken with the plot are annoying, but the chemistry of the lead characters, vibrant themes, and emotional payoff of the story are enough to make this movie shine. For anyone dealing with their own dollhouse situation, this movie is an excellent source of inspiration. What did you think about this movie? Did you love the way the father-daughter relationship was portrayed, or did you find it lacking in parts? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Dollhouse. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the American horror movie Hellraiser. Bye bye!